After entering a monster-filled castle, he took over her body and cursed her brother, transforming into another person. On the night of the full moon, the curse grew stronger, and he was unable to control himself, causing her harm. When they returned to the castle and Mary went to her, Ray left in sorrow and told her she would be in her room. Mary then told Claude, "I will be inside too, my lord," and went to Ray and said, "Lady Ray, I will help you get dressed." When Ray took off her clothes, Mary was shocked at the injuries on her body and said to herself, "The master has gone mad because of the curse. Perhaps it is good that he stopped here." She helped her while saying to herself, "At least she is walking on her own." Suddenly, Ray said to her, "Mary, why am I always the one who has to remain ignorant?" Mary apologized and then shouted at her, "Why doesn't anyone tell me anything?" Mary was in shock and said, "What are you—" Ray cut her off and shouted, "You fainted last time because of Claude, didn't you?" While Mary thought she had discovered their secret, she said to herself, "I knew she would find out someday. Although she may be inexperienced and naive, she would be a fool not to realize that there is something strange about this castle." She smiled nervously and said to Lady Ray, "But we can't be the ones to take the blow," and then said, "I'm afraid there's a big misunderstanding. I fainted because of my illness. It has nothing to do with Lord Claude." Ray shouted at her in anger, "I thought you were different, Mary, but you also want me to close my eyes and ears even if something strange happens. Do you expect me to laugh it off as if nothing happened?" She fell silent for a moment and then said, "I would like to be alone. Please leave." She did so and left. She found Claude standing in front of her and said, "Lord Claude," and he looked at her. She said, "I think Lady Ray is upset. What if you tried to calm her down a bit?" When Claude didn't respond, she smiled and said, "Lord Claude, did Lady Ray find out everything? That didn't happen, did it? Everything will be fine. You know how kind and innocent she is. She will understand as long as you explain everything to her." Claude said, "What do you want me to tell her? That I am an animal who goes into heat because of a cursed curse." Mary said, "That's not what I meant." And Claude said, "That she should forgive me because I am a monster who is hundreds of years old? How exactly do you want me to explain? What do you think will give her peace of mind?" He started to torment her as she suffered, and then said, "It's better this way." She looked at him in surprise, and Claude said, "Much better this way." She was shocked when he said, "Let her go." She said, "What do you mean? I can't understand what you just said. You want her to stay with you, Lord Claude." He smiled and said, "You have a cunning side, Mary. Well, I'm sure life has gotten easier for you lately. You've been sleeping well. I even heard you humming yesterday. I guess you found life somewhat bearable after making Ray the docile lamb. All you care about is your own well-being, not Ray's." He then laughed and said, "It will do her no good to associate with monsters like us. There is no point." Mary put her face in her hands and said to herself, "I thought this was just a bump in the road after all. They were madly in love. It was just a silly lover's quarrel and they were just confused." Then, at dinner time, Ray suddenly got up and Mary said, "Lady Ray, won't you finish your dinner?" Ray said to Mary, "I would like to have dinner in my room starting tomorrow, and I want to be alone." Mary looked at Claude in shock, but Claude just drank his wine without paying attention to what Ray had said. This made Mary feel nervous, and she said to herself, "I've never seen Lady Ray so angry before. I was worried about her strong reaction, but I knew how much they wanted each other, and I thought all they needed was a little time. But Lady Ray doesn't even want to be in the same room with Lord Claude anymore. And Lord Claude is making no effort to fix this problem. She then said to the servant, "This can't happen." The servant asked, "Are you okay?" Mary, in shock, said, "It seems Lady Ray has made up her mind, hasn't she? She will suppress her feelings for Lord Claude. Lord Claude won't do anything, but when Lady Ray finally leaves him, I'll kill us both." The servant said, "Well, wait a minute, and Mary said, "This can't happen. I won't let this happen." The servant put his hand on his head and said, "Do you have a plan?" Mary hadn't thought about it and said, "A plan?" Then she said to him, "A plan, yes. I have to do something about this." She went to the kitchen, and while preparing soup, she remembered her past before she turned into a monster, when Claude said to her, "So you are a mother of 2 sons?" Mary said, "Yes." And Claude said, "My beginnings look ugly these days. Send me one of them when they all recover." Mary said, "When my family died of a deadly plague, I came to this castle in a desperate attempt to grasp at straws, and the mysterious castle owner showed me a kindness that would save my family. And the medicine he gave me was indeed a miracle. And my son, who couldn't get out of bed no matter how hard I tried, was healed within days, and my heart was full of gratitude to the lord of the castle." But then she remembered Claude's words to her. "My beginnings look ugly these days. Send me one of them when they all recover." She said to herself, "When he grows up." And indeed, her son grew up and got married. It's natural for people to be deceitful, so I broke my promise to the lord of the castle. She said to herself, "If he lives in a big castle like this, he will be able to find people to work for him at any time. He was kind enough to give me a cure to save my family, so everything must be okay." But the truth is that she turned into a monster. She said, "I shouldn't have done it. Oh God, forgive me." And she went back to Claude again and knocked on his door saying, "Please help me." When she went in to him, he said to her, "I see you have been cursed. I'm afraid I can't help you. Maybe you should have kept our promise." She then broke down in tears from the shock of what he said. From that time on, she remained in the castle and never left. Out of deep remorse, she said, "I would never have taken the medicine if I had known this would happen." Then the servant came to her with the soup and said, "How do you plan to stay like this?" Mary looked at the food and started to talk and say, "My mental health has improved over time, or maybe I'm just starting to feel numb." And here we go back to the present. She is still talking to herself. "I told myself that I was atoning for breaking the promise, and that my family would become closer to God because of my sacrifice." Then she poured the drink she had made and went to Lord Claude and knocked on his door, saying, "Lord Claude, I brought tea for Lady Ray because she has a cold, but she won't open the door for me." And then she remembered Claude's words when he said, "All you care about is your own well-being, not Ray's. I think you've found life somewhat bearable after making Ray the docile lamb." She smiled and said, "What next? It was Lord Claude who gave up on breaking the curse, but Lady Ray was the driving force that changed that. And he expects me to just give up on that? It seems that Lady Ray has a high fever and called me cunning. She blurred the lines between good and evil for me long ago. I doubt Lord Claude will give up on Lady Ray." She then said to him, "But I think she will open the door for you." She left him the drink and went away, saying to herself, "Lord Claude, we are all lonely souls gathered inside this cursed castle. I hope they will reconcile soon. We need Lady Ray in this castle. Then we monsters can finally know what it feels like to be human." And then Claude went to her with the drink, looked at her and found her talking because of the fever, and she was saying, "No, I'm sorry, don't leave me." And she was crying in her sleep, saying his name, Claude. And then Claude sat down next to her and wiped away her tears, saying, "Ray." And suddenly Ray woke up and said to herself, "What is this smell? Did Lady Mary come?" And then she found Claude, and when she called his name, he turned to her and put his hands on her head. Ray said to him, "Why are you here?" Claude said, "I don't think you have a fever." And he gave her the tea, saying, "Drink this." When she did, she said to herself, "It's bitter. He must have thought I was sick." And then she said to him, "I think my stomach hurts." Claude said, "Your stomach? Anywhere else?" Ray said, "My shoulders and back hurt. My legs hurt too. And my hands." Claude was staring at her in amazement, and Ray said shyly, "I think my stomach is upset because—" And suddenly Claude kissed her. Ray said to herself, "This is the void in my heart that finally feels full, and the first person who saw me for who I really am. I don't care that he's a monster." She put him on the bed and held his face, saying to herself, "If he's a kind and gentle monster like him." She looked at him and cried, saying to herself, "I don't mind being eaten." And then he did it with Ray. Suddenly his godfather appeared, smiling and saying, "I guess I knew you'd find her. It took you a long time, Claude. There's nothing I wish for more now. I'm not regretting my decision now, am I?" Claude said to himself in surprise, "Regret?" And here he looked at Ray and said to himself, "I could feel it. I knew that the walls I had built around myself for decades were slowly crumbling. At first, it was just a new game to entertain him. And then he remembered what she had said to him. You know this already. You already know that I have fallen in love with you." He put his hands on her face and said, "I almost feel bad for imprisoning you. You have become helpless and defenseless." And then he hugged her. The next day, in a new morning, Mary came with food for Ray, who said to her, "Thank you, Lady Mary. And I'm sorry I yelled at you yesterday over such a trivial thing. I appreciate everything you do for me, Lady Mary." Mary smiled and said, "Don't mention it. I was wrong too." And then Ray ate the bread with joy, saying, "This is delicious." Suddenly Mary said to her, "Were you able to talk to him? Didn't the Lord visit your room last night? There is nothing that cannot be solved with conversation." Ray looked at the bread sadly and said, "No, I didn't do that. I should talk to him, shouldn't I?" And then Mary said to her, "Oh, so you haven't had a chance to talk to him yet?" Ray smiled and said, "Because I'm a coward, Mary." And then Mary said to her, "Lady Ray, I cannot answer any of the questions you have about this castle." Ray listened to her as Mary continued, "Only the Lord knows the answers to those questions." Ray took a deep breath and said, "I understand."